Hello, everybody, and welcome to the special council meeting of Friday, February the 16th. I'd like to begin the meeting with reading an issue of our information about participating in the meeting. Please be advised, North Frontenac council meetings are recorded. By attending a public meeting of council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of the recording. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. The township shall not be responsible should technical difficulties prevent the recording of any meeting or a portion thereof. Technical issues may include, but are not limited to, the availability of the internet connection, device failure or malfunction, unavailability of social media platforms or power outages. It should be noted that no protection is afforded to council members, employees, or the public for comments made during meetings which are subsequently challenged in a court of law and or determined to be defamatory. Notice is hereby provided that under the authority of the Municipal Act 2001 and in accordance with the Municipal Freedom of Information and Privacy Act, MFIPA, that all information provided for at a meeting or other public process are considered a public record. Members of council, staff, delegates, and attendees should be mindful of using names of individuals or entities when discussing matters in public. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behavior or comments. First item is the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Good, seconded by Councillor Regent. Be it resolved that council approves the agenda dated February 16th, 2024 as amended.
Comments? Approved? In favor? Approved. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. Adoption of minutes of February the 6th.
Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Good. Be it resolved that council approves the minutes from the special meeting dated February 6th, 2024.
Comments? In favor? Approved. Business arising out of the minutes, council discussion from the draft 2024 budget.
Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Good. Be it resolved that council receives the 2024 draft budget for consideration.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Public Works Manager Capital Plan. That's down below, right? No, that's where we're going to discuss. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, that's where we discussed the budget. Yep. Okay, so let's back that up. So we're receiving that for any information, which is including your document, the second one for information. And this is where we're going to discuss the budget for next year, 2024. Okay. So we started last year, or the last time we went through it all, we went through it really detailed, didn't make any decisions. I'd like to go through the sections quickly. You've had another week to look at it. We will look at the issues that you raised and we'll make a decision, aye, yes, or no with them. Okay. So we're going to start with should be council. Is that right?
So can I maybe just start with just in light that we just had a Calaveras Joint Fire Board meeting? It does essentially change kind of where we're starting from. So we will, with the approval in principle, so it still has to go to a full council meeting. With the increase that was approved, would be starting at a 6.92% increase.
Okay. And we can't do anything about that additional.
So it still comes to council for final approval and goes to their council for final approval.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that wonderful news. Okay.
You're welcome.
All right, so the first portfolio or the first department is council. The last time we were in here, we talked about, where did that go? We talked about council. John?
Can we talk about the presentation I put out before we talk about the details? Because one of the reasons I did this is I find personally that this process of going through the departments line by line doesn't tell me a darn thing. I just find it quite confusing without putting things in context. And the document that I sent out attempts to put some context on the budget around the various departments. So I think it might be of value to discuss the issues that I want to discuss about increases in spending in each of these major departments first.
Well, I have no problem going through it line by line because I understand it, but let's go.
Well, what I did in this table was to pull out expenses. I filtered out contributions to reserves and capital expenses, which are shown in the total expenses. So the numbers I have on this table are actual operating expenses before transfers and before capital. And what? It's in the recent, there was a.
It's the second item on the agenda, Wayne. See that, DM Engels? Okay.
So what I find is going through there's 24 departments we're talking about. We go through each of those departments line by line without too much consideration about which are the major ones, which are the totally trivial ones like livestock. When I laid out the expenses, the actual expenses, last year budgeted, this year budgeted, I found it quite alarming that the three largest ones, which are roads, four largest ones, roads, administration, fire, and waste recycling. They probably use up 80% or more of our level. The increase in operating expenses in roads, according to this, is up 1.9%. And to me, that seems reasonable. And in fact, I'm surprised it's that low. But then I look at administration, where last year we budgeted just over $1 million. It's up 7%. This is, sorry, Kelly has a question.
So I received this yesterday. So I can speak to where the differences are, and maybe that will help, because some of it is, we've reallocated funds, payroll from one department to another and things like that. So we've tried to kind of high level, just because of timing, capture the differences to maybe help. That will be helpful. I'm just not sure how you want to tackle this. I just think I do more or less have an explanation for
Okay, well,
the changes.
first of all, the roads being up only 1.9% is the result of the public works manager and staff here working diligently and pushing everything off that they possibly can for next year. Like, I know there's a $27,000 item for tires for a loader that they're working on that should have been in this year, but they can barely make it, but they will make it to next year to keep the budget increases low. Okay? So if Kelly would like to provide some explanation, especially to administration. I mean, we're looking at roads. We know that's an issue. We know waste is kind of beyond our control because we have several dump sites or waste sites we have to deal with. So fire is just fire. Go. Sure.
I'd appreciate hearing that, Kelly, but let me just finish here. It won't take long. So I see that spending at administration is budgeted up 7%. That's a $1 million department. Fire is a $900,000 department. It's up 8.9%. This is not capital. This is just operating expenses. Why is it up 8.9%? I would argue that this is a little bit out of control. It's way above inflation. The next one is waste and recycling. And there are reasons for all these increases. Waste this year is budgeted at 574. That's a 20% increase over last year. Recycling is at almost a 10% increase over last year. So when I don't know the detailed reasons for all these increases, and I'm sure they can be justified in some way, but what I see happening is that apparently essential departments are using up all the money, and departments which are considered frivolous or interesting, or things that are not completely essential, like maybe maintaining community halls at a certain level, providing for economic development incentives. Those things are taking the hit because these three very large departments are using up all the money, way over inflation. Now, I would love to hear comments.
Well, before Kelly does it, the intent that I had was I got yours first and I sent it on to Corey for redistribute, which she kindly did, so thank you. When we go through the individual departments, I think that's a great time because we have everything in front of everybody. So if you want to look at the administration, we have that open in front of us and we have every item that's in there and you can ask the questions and Kelly can participate and provide the background. If you want to talk general, this is where we're at, but the details, I don't think we need to do that until we're there.
Well, I do think there is value in talking generally. And I think maybe one of the things that council can do is to direct staff to allow increases only within the inflation rate in each of the major departments. Pick the 4 or 5 or 6 major departments and direct staff to keep increases in spending that are levied below 3.8% or whatever number we're going to use. And if they can't, take the money from a reserve.
Anybody else have any comments on this?
Can we just have Kelly go through each? I mean, she's obviously done some homework, so maybe we
No.
could.
Sorry, I don't like saying no. The reason I want to do this, I want to keep this in order. John's done a lot of work. Kelly and the staff have done tremendous amounts of work. I just would like to go through this list and I would like to have Kelly chime in whenever there's an issue. Like the first one, there's one at council, there's one for administration. At that point in time, you know, it's up 13.7%, up 7%. Economic development's down, sorry, but administration's up 7%. And that's the time when all the items are in front of us, rather than jump around from A to B to C to D and come back to A. So if you want to have a general discussion about what John was talking about whether or not we should restrict, affect all of us to staying within the rate of inflation. And how do we handle that for other items and so on that are beyond our control, then let's have that discussion. Floor is open. Okay, so let's go through the items and we have the deputy mayor's comments. And Deputy Mayor, whenever we get to one that you are concerned about, then we will stop, we will go through it and let you have the floor. Okay? All right. So the first one up is the department is council. According to John's work, we're down 10.6%. Is there anything in here that we want to discuss? And make a decision on? Where's the council's convention? Is it there? I don't see it right now.
So the council
Oh, sorry, got it,
conferences.
got it.
Okay.
So last week, we discussed conventions and conferences. And it was kind of a heated topic. And I'd like to point out that several of you passed motions that sent a second counselor, that a counselor to a second conference last year and told us that that was normal. So now we're changing everything. So I'm going to recommend we take that 20,000 and we reduce it to 5,000. So if everybody's agree with that, that's what it'll be.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, and the 5,000, just to, so we all are aware, that is for what exactly?
5,000 covers the two conferences that Counselor Fowler and myself have already went to, and $100 to cancel the annual conference. Okay, so there'll be no conferences allowed for the rest of us, for anybody for the rest of this year. If you want to make it 7,500, that leaves us one conference in the bank. Tell me what you want. That will, 5,000 will cut 15,000 out the total. So this was a motion, or did we just? Oh, sorry, Joe, do we just keep a list of this stuff? John?
Well, that's fine, we can do that. But this is a department that's already down 10% in the budget from last year, so why are we wringing our hands over,
We're not.
well, we're cutting out money for sending counselors to conferences.
Last week, I got ran over the coals by everybody here. Because I took advantage of what was happening. No one knows what the county offers and how they set things up or what I might want to do there. And everybody agreed that we should be cutting council's conferences. So here we are a week later. And I'm saying I cancel the conference. It makes common sense, drop this to 5,000 and put 15,000 in McKinney. We don't have any money. We need to find it somewhere. And this is a place to cut. Councillor Regent.
Okay, we cannot sit here and complain that we need to find money and then leave this in here. I have a very hard time leaving this in there. I completely agree that at least $15,000 of this has to come out. There's other things that we're gonna discuss today that I know I'm probably gonna be the only person who actually wants to even stand up for it, but I refuse to allow this to sit here. And we're gonna nickel and dime a whole bunch of other stuff. We do not need to be spending $15,000 a year for us to go to a conference. This makes no sense.
Deputy Mayor.
Well, it made sense to three previous councils that I was on. Yes, and you have the right to say that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't mind missing conferences, but this is a policy shift. And I'm still pointing out why target a department that's already down 10% from last year? And the reason it's down, of course, is because we paid a consultant to do a strat plan last year, but not this year.
Okay. You know, we're talking about, is it reasonable for this council to drop the allowance from 20,000 to 5,000? If we, thank you. But next year, it's in the budget. We can look at it and say, we want to add another 5,000 to it or 10,000. I mean, we have to do something. You have to start somewhere. And here's the first place. Everybody has to take a hit. Okay. So can I just have a show of hands that we're okay with dropping this from 20 to 5,000? All right, done. Okay. Now, John, administration, this is where you started. So now you have the floor.
Well, I think I've already said what I had to say. It's up 7%. It's a big department. It spends $1 million. So 7% is $70,000. If that were cut back to inflation rates, that would be $35,000 saved. I don't know how you do that in administration, but that's what it would be. If administration expenses went up by the inflation rate, there would be $35,000 free dollars.
Kelly?
So part of that increase in administration is due to reallocating. So the EDO position was 100% under economic development. So we decided that 20% of that is communications. So now 20% of that salary is in under admin, which adds to the increase, which then ultimately makes economic development look like it had a decrease because we reallocated wages. So the same also happened with planning. We had changed the allocation a couple of years ago due to the increase in planning. That has leveled out, so we have reallocated some of the planning back to admin. Unfortunately, just due to timing, I didn't have time to figure out what that percentage would be had we not done those calculations. So the administration is seeing the cost of living increase, and then we've had an increase just in our computers, just the software and maintenance agreements for all kinds of programs are the two items that are driving the administration. But like the EDO position was, it's like $16,000 of that.
Okay, there's one item here. It's under conference, conventions and conferences. I think it's set for 11,000. It's down from $1,000 last year. We spent 8,800 in 23. I think that should be brought back to 10,000. The only reason, I know it's nickel and diming, but I think everybody has to share in the pain, so to speak. Everybody has to do their part. Is there any chance we're committed over $10,000, or do we know? We don't know. It's only 1,000, but 1,000's $1,000. Corey?
I'm sorry, can you, do you know what line you're on there, Jared, just so I can
I'm
kind
on
of see?
50180 conferences or conventions and conferences.
So that increase was just, we were looking at, some of the actuals from last year, and just our 2,000 that we've been carrying, we just increased it a little bit, so I don't see a problem with reducing it by 1,000.
I'm a proponent of keeping your staff trained and no other than the council are. Conferences are kind of a bonus. Yes, you learn, but if something's got to go, I'd rather the conference budget was cut than the training budget. Does anybody have an issue with that? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to drop it more? What do you want? What are your wishes, folks? Councilor Regent?
That makes perfect sense. It's $1,000. I agree with you there. I think the training for staff is uber important. But you could save $1,000 there.
Councilor Fowler, your thoughts?
I think we should be cutting some things out, and I might go along with that.
Right. Yeah. Councilor Hermer?
Well, it sounds reasonable to me.
It's small. How about you, Councilor Hoodle?
Well, everybody knows my opinion on conferences, but I'm okay with that.
Okay. Councilor Good?
A little bit mixed on it because I think the conferences, as long as they're beneficial to the staff that's going to them and they're learning from them, and from what I've seen from the admin reports that's brought back, there's been lots of knowledge picked up at these conferences for staff. I'm against us, I'm glad that 15,000 that left from for a council. So I think I'd like to leave it in for staff.
The only reason is just that they spent 9,000, so that's really, I'm advocating another 1,000, which makes 10. So that's four conferences, essentially at 2,250. Maybe some of the staff ones are cheaper. I don't know.
All right, and
That was the only reason I went with the 10 instead of the 11.
saving $1,000 and I'm fine with that. I don't have this numbers up here.
Okay.
It's gone again.
Well, we're going to be talking about the EDO position and about the community improvement plan today, I think, and trying to make decisions right now. So this is a department that's already down 13.7%. And part of that, Kelly has explained, is because 20% of the EDO position went to admin, $16,000 or so.
Correct. One of the other is that we no longer have the students in the libraries. So that was removed. So that's 16,000 as well. And then there's 12,000 reduction from the CIP program. So that's what makes up the difference between last year and this year, the significant.
So my argument in this case would be, please keep the CIP program at that $12,000. To keep the reduction in the economic development department as small as possible.
Mayor?
No, I appreciate it. I turn it off because sometimes I can hear whistling from the other mics. It depends whose mic's on. Some are more susceptible to interference than others. 50100 salaries. The EDO, $98,750. That's the economic development officer, and that's changing that position from a contract to a full-time position. We had a significant discussion about whether or not we should keep it. So there's also another 20% sitting under 20% of that amount, so another 19,000 sitting under the administration. Is that right, Kelly?
So just want to clarify that 98 is the EDO plus a portion of the manager of community development's salary. So it's that's a combination. So that's
Wouldn't wanna cut
not
that.
just the EDO's
Okay.
position.
So what are we cutting then roughly? What are we thinking of cutting?
I
So that
believe,
would be about 80, 83?
well, 83 was the total. and We've done 20% to add
Okay.
to admin. So
So now's the time to make a decision whether what we want to do with this position. Vern?
Well, I did some research. I think this is a luxury appointment to this township. If you look at all the neighboring municipalities, not one of them have their own EDO. So my conclusion, there must be a reason for that, and it's probably financial, because they probably don't see a financial benefit coming back to their municipality for the cost of that operation.
Counselor Fowler?
Yeah, I agree. The position has been helpful. I think we've got a lot of little things that were done through that position, but is it essential? And that's my concern. Is it really essential? And it might help out in some other area in the economic development. The committee might help them out with a lot of things, but you know, we could be in trouble here. That's with the high rates of living and inflation and that.
Mr. Hoople, your thoughts?
So I've been debating this over my head for the last 2 weeks. And what I've come to, you know, I have to agree with my fellow counselors here to my right. Is it a luxury for this municipality? And it's sort of a catch-22 when you look at it, but I would have to agree with them.
Deputy Mayor?
I think you know what I think about this. It is a luxury in a sense. It is aspirational. It's this township attempting to do things that our neighboring townships don't necessarily do, which doesn't mean it's a wrong thing to do. I keep hearing it. I've been hearing it for 12 years, 14 years. We like to think that we are leaders in this township. We don't do everything exactly the same as other townships, and we all know that. But I come back to the big picture. These 4 or 5 major departments are spending way over inflation more than last year, and we're cutting this aspirational position because of that.
Counselor Good?
Yeah, I keep hearing like the admin is spending way over, but they also took over the EDO. thing. They also took the EDO part of their wages over into that department and in some of the other departments. So my opinion is that we don't need 2 economic development officers. One in the county and one here. County one is supposed to be working with us here as well. So I don't think we need to be spending that luxury money on that. And this times, we got people on different pensions and everything else in the township. We keep going on and they can't afford to go pay taxes.
The Regent,
So I don't know how we could possibly evaluate this after only 3 years, for one. I don't know how we're going to proceed with a strategic plan that has anything to do with economic development if we don't have an economic development officer. To Deputy Mayor's point, you know, this is something that, this is maybe an aspirational thing, but I'm not really sure how we're going to make any significant progress for the businesses in North Frontenac. I mean, who's going to do this work? And, you know, we probably should have had this position for a lot longer than 3 years. I'm so disappointed. I'm severely disappointed in this decision.
well, first of all, it's not a final decision by Councillor Hermer.
I just like to correct, it's not 3 years, it's 4.
Is it 4? Okay, so that's a cost of over $300,000. So my thought is, I'd really like to keep this, however, we are in 2024's budget scenario. And you know, I really don't think I can support as much as I want to. I called the mayor of Central Frontenac and I asked what they do, and they do not have a community or economic development officer. I think our EDO has been good for working with existing businesses and making them feel good and expanding them and teaching them about each other. But I think it's time to rethink this, and how we look outside. The world has changed. We're about to enter an electrification era. You know, are we going to be a willing host for electrical power plants or electrical generation systems? Are we going to generate a couple small subdivisions? What are we going to do? There's none of that has come in. And quite frankly, the idea from the Economic Development Committee about a campground, I think it's a great idea. But where do we get the money to finance it? Are we going to go out and basically debenture $5 or $6 or $7 million to do this? Or maybe we should be looking to partner with somebody. So I'd like to see if we want to do that. Wonderful. Let's see what that looks like. What can we do to support it? We don't have those resources. Vern.
Well, when you mentioned about municipal campground, when I look at it, I see we have a provincial park to the west of us, we have a provincial park to the south of us. And it's evident within the next few years, we're going to have one within our municipality at White Duck. So I mean, I think that's kind of a pipe dream to develop a municipal one with all that outside competition, plus the private enterprise.
Personally, I agree with you, but I don't want to dump all over their dreams, because I think maybe the dreams can generate, like, the world is built on dreams. Exactly. So anyway, but that's my reason. So I frankly can't support this. Stephanie,
So could we have a recorded vote on this motion, please?
that's coming up later.
Okay,
We can do
that'd be
that.
great.
Yes, we can. I think it's a good idea. Okay, so that would go. All right. Is there anything else under the economic, or the CIPs underneath here? Where is that? That is item 50267. And it's the top up of $28,380. And Corey, you can step in here and correct me if I'm wrong. I understand the CIP program was funded by the county 7 years ago, because we complained about the lack of support from their economic development officer. No,
That was a different program. That was for, we'd use that for, that was a different one. That was all about the KMP and the Stargate. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. Yeah,
oh, we can still go back and go to Wayne's point. We're not getting anything out of it.
yeah, no, the CIP was that we got $70,000, I believe, this several years ago, right from the county, and then that was spent. And then I think we came back to council and got an extra 15 added last year. Kelly?
So, yeah, so last year we came to council and council approved an extra 15 from township dollars because we had exhausted all their dollars. So this is all township dollars now to continue on with the program.
Okay. So we're looking for a $30,000 fund. There's $1,681 or $80, 16, what about that? $1,621 not allocated. We're looking for $28,380. And we talked last meeting about cutting this to either $15,000 or $20,000. There was a discussion about eliminating this program altogether. What are your wishes, folks? Roy, I can't see you. Sorry.
Can someone just explain to me exactly what the CIP program is, what it's all about, what it does, who it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So our CIP program is for our businesses, so they're eligible for grants for modifying their properties, for accessibility, for helping with planning approvals. They can get money towards their permits to say expand or different variables. So basically, to sum it in short, it's a long document, but it is to assist our businesses financially with projects to just to make their business thrive in North Frontenac.
So why was this program even brought forward? Like what brought this on?
So there's a long history that Corey could probably explain. This has been in for a while, but do you want to talk about how it started, Corey?
So it's about providing incentives to businesses. So there was a time when our businesses felt that there was just nothing that the township was doing. And without a CIP in place, there's nothing we could offer that wouldn't be considered bonusing. So at that time, that's why we put CIPs became legal. We put it in place so that we could help them with their with all those things that Brooke talked about. A lot of it's about beautification too. I mean, you know, that's kind of, so most or several municipalities have these in place now. Now, a lot of them use it for like downtown beautification or things like that. So this was our way of putting that in place, and we've kept it geared toward businesses because we really wanted to have a good impact on the business. And it's been very well taken, you know, it's been taken advantage of greatly. So it's certainly been a success for us.
Well, there's no doubt, I'm sure it's been taken advantage of. If I was a business, I would take advantage of it too. And I can understand the beautification of downtown, but we really don't have a downtown, so again, is it the municipality's responsibility to fund businesses? That's the question I have in my mind. You know, I understand, you know, if there's an accessibility issue that we might help with that. There's certain projects I would agree with, but I don't know if I agree with every project. So I'm not saying wipe this out, but it might be reduce it by half. That's what I would be thinking.
John and then Stephanie and then Wayne.
Well, again, here, we're talking about shifts in policy that are fairly major and should be noted. The previous mayor put a great deal of emphasis on business cooperation and development. He held meetings independent of the Economic Development Task Force with business groups. He held 2 or 3 of those meetings, and the message, one of the messages that came through loud and clear was, we need help. And what the CIP does, a township is not allowed to bonus, as Corey said, is not allowed to bonus individual businesses. Like we can't offer $100,000 to a company to come and build a plant here. The Municipal Act doesn't allow this. What the CIP does, you put a CIP in place, it allows you to, within a very clearly defined program, bonus individual businesses according to applications that they make. The EDTF decided that, yes, most municipalities have downtown beautification projects. We decided that we wanted it township-wide and we wanted it business, not residential. And that was the incentive. So if you cut this out, just realize you're making a policy change.
Larissa?
So Brooke, I have a question. Just maybe this would clarify something. So for example, if I wanted to make my business wheelchair accessible, what would be the cost of that? Any idea?
For it is, I'm sorry. For the business, it's probably close to $15,000.
Basically, you know, if my business was in this township, you could help me with 5,000 of that 15,000.
that could fall under the.
Right. And if we reduce this, as it would seem, seems to be the intent, that 5,000 is probably gonna turn out to be $1,000, $2,000, maybe if you're lucky. So perhaps you won't be able to make your business wheelchair accessible, which at some point in the near future is going to be a law. And it's probably gonna be in the next year or two. So I think we need to be very clear here that this is not just about planting a few geraniums and a cedar tree to make my property look nicer. There are many other reasons for this program. However, considering the hit that this department seems to be taking, again, just registering my disappointment with where this is going.
Counselor Good?
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me here too, but when I seen the thing before, there was even put shingles on or siding and all that kind of stuff. I could see it could be in wheelchair accessibility, something like that to help out, but not most of what the other stuff that I seen in that was. And I would like to see it reduced to half anyway.
You, hang on, Counselor Hermer, then Corey.
Maybe it's just a matter of redefining what's allowable.
Okay, Corey.
So just when we did this, there was a lot of public consultation. We had meetings with the businesses and these were the things that they had said that they needed help with. So that's kind of where we got to, how we got to this phase and that's why we're there. So again, it was something that the businesses expressed, you know, if you're going to do this program, these are the types of things that would benefit us in a great way. So, and that's kind of why we're at what we're at. So.
To Stephanie's point, the conditions then of the program would remain the same. We would just be able to help fewer, not the same number of individuals. And Stephanie, for your store, unless you're bringing them in the back, you're probably looking at $100,000 or $200,000, literally. But
Take $5,000 for some help, wouldn't I? So, but that's a perspective of a business owner
we did
at this table.
this down the road, a few kilometers or a kilometer or so last year. Okay. So I got the impression, the consensus that we want to keep the program, that we want to reduce it. What should we reduce it to? Counselor Fowler, you're up first.
I say 15,000.
Counselor Hermer,
I agree with that.
Counselor Hoodle,
Yeah, that sounds good.
Deputy Mayor.
Leave it or increase it.
Okay, good point. Counselor Good. Counselor Regent,
I agree with Deputy Mayor, leave it.
15,000 it is. So that brings it to 15,000. Well, that's It's
No,
later.
I want a recorded vote on this.
It's coming up later. That vote will come up. It's on the agenda.
Well, we just voted.
Wow, no, you have another chance to say officially, yes or no at this meeting. Kelly,
Sorry, I just need clarification. A total of 15,000? So so we have the 1,600 carry forward, so we're gonna have a total available as 15,000, or you want to reduce?
$13,000 cut.
Okay,
So the program will sit at 15,000. We'll keep it. It'd just be down from 30,000. Okay. Next up is anything on Sundry that's 48,000, but there isn't, sorry, go ahead.
It is up for a worthwhile reason,
And what is that?
Dr. Recruit.
Well, there's two things it's up for.
What's
It's up for that subsidizing seniors stay at home as well. That's 20,000.
Is that called a frill?
What?
Seniors, support for seniors at home? Is that aspirational and non-essential?
Well, that's an interesting comment. Okay, folks. Want to hear your comments, council? So we passed a resolution last year that we would do a one-year pilot program of $10,000 to rural Frontenac Community Services and $10,000 to Land O'Lakes Community Development to help seniors stay in their homes. The intent was to subsidize services and increase services to the seniors. And that was in lieu of building a seniors residence that we have failed to move forward on. Councillor Regent.
So we were just chatting about this before the meeting and that money's sitting there and yet for whatever reason, and I do not know what the reason is, to be clear, but for whatever reason, I know of a few people that have gone to community services to sign up to complete this work and have tried for 2 years to go and do this. And they're getting nowhere. So, I mean, it's sitting here and it's shocking that we haven't used it. But there are people that are trying to provide these services, which is what this was intended for, but they can't get anywhere when they go over there. So there's a bigger problem at play here, which perhaps is not for this discussion, but someone needs to figure out.
I know the uptake has been slow, but that's a good point. The question we've got is, do we want to reduce this lump sum? Pardon me? We're under sundry and we are at 50370. What they do at rural Frontenac is they subsidize services by $5 an hour. And the problem both of these organizations have is they service more than North Frontenac. So rural Frontenac services Central Frontenac and North Frontenac, and they probably service Hay Valley and whatever else as well. And on this side, we have Land O'Lakes Community Development. They service North Frontenac and they service Adigan Highlands. So this subsidy only goes to the North Frontenac side.
How do we know that the seniors even know about this? How do they find out about this? Like, so if I needed this service, how would I know that? Did they have a list of people they're supposed to tell about this? And then therefore they build a staff based on the number of people that need it? Like, I feel like there's something wrong here. I can't believe that there's nobody when our largest population in this township is seniors, but none of our seniors need this. That doesn't make any sense to me. So there's something wrong here.
I think you're being a little unfair. There have been numerous social media posts, and maybe seniors may not. They may or may not, but you also have to put a little bit of reliance on the delivery organizations as well. So, and maybe the program is so new that it's a problem. Deputy Mayor.
I know that the RFCS program has been discussed at community hall meetings for seniors. But it is difficult to get the word out to a population that's not all over social media all the time.
Right.
So just in speaking with rural Frontenac Community Services, they've had some uptake and they're pretty optimistic that as it continues to get known, as people continue to use it, that it will take off. Land O'Lakes, we haven't had zero uptake, and we've had, according to Land O'Lakes, I just talked to them a couple weeks ago, Kelly, I guess. And they told me that they've had zero uptake, and they've also had zero people come in and ask them to be a staff there. But now you just said something different, but I'm just saying, reporting, that's what they've told me. So I mean, again, we've been advertising. I think we put stuff up at community halls too. I mean, a lot of our seniors do attend events at the halls. So when they look at the ads on the bulletin boards and stuff, so there should be stuff up there. Brooke, did that get put up at the waste site? We also have little things did we get that taken care of, or? We just started kind of another advertising blitz, because when I had asked how it was going, I was kind of concerned again that we haven't had uptake out, especially at the Land O'Lakes Community Services way. So we're trying our best to get that out there. We've used the newspaper in the past. We've, but again, if I agree with what the mayor said, the agencies really need to be pushing this as well. And if they're not, it's pretty hard for us to do that, so.
Hermer?
Well, just to clarify something, Corey, that you mentioned about uptake with community services in Charlotte Lake. They don't even offer an outside assistance program like we're offering to the public.
And that's very, very true. And yet there's some uptake there. Like, we don't have an answer here. And this is supposed to come up, I think, in March or April, because it's 1 year into the program. I'm not advocating getting rid of the program. All I'm saying is where we are today, should we be looking at that 20,000 and reducing it to a more realistic figure for 2024? Kelly?
So just to clarify, council put the money for this program into a reserve. So this is coming from a reserve. So even if you do reduce it, that is not going to affect the tax levy or the tax rate. That'll just leave the money in the reserve that council has set up.
Their end of the discussion for now. Okay. All right, so that's, anything else under sundry? Thanks for that, Kelly. Fire. Deputy Mayor, this is up 8.9%.
Well, this is a huge and complex department. And I don't know, going through it line by line, what I would recommend taking out, but when I see an 8.9% increase in a $900,000 department, that's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money over inflation. So I'll just leave it there.
Councilor Hoodle?
So 8.9% for fire, does that include the ask for the benefit package for the volunteer firefighters?
Mr. Mayor, through you, it does include the ask for the $24,000 benefits. It includes $5,000 for the automatic aid agreement for Central Frontenac to protect the Snow Road area. It includes an increase of $3,000 for the firefighters to attend electric vehicle training. It also includes a $5,000 increase in payroll cost of living, and several other items that range in the 2 to 5 category.
So also, so based on the way Deputy Mayor Inglis, looking just at expenses. So we also have a grant we've applied for. So the money to be spent, if the grant is received, is in under expenses. But because this comparison doesn't take into how things are funded, so that it does make it look like a huge increase, but there's like $46,000 there that will be coming from a grant. So it's not a levy increase, because we're just looking at this comparison is just expenses to expenses, not taking into consideration how anything's funded. So the 8.9 includes 46,000 for a grant.
In other words, if that grant does not come through, the
We're not doing
46,000
it.
will not be spent.
Correct.
And if we don't follow up with the 24,000 for benefits, then there's another 24,000 off the top. So let's talk about the $24,000 for firemen's benefits, proposed benefits. That would be item 50110, benefits Canada Life. 10 under fire. Councilor Hermer?
As I understand, the chief can probably confirm this. This is just for North Frontenac firefighters. It doesn't include Calader Berry.
Mr. Mayor, through you, that is correct, Councillor.
So if it's paid here, they're gonna look for it and want it as well.
Anybody else have comments on this? Councilor Regent?
Just because Caladar Berry might ask for it doesn't mean they're going to get it. Yeah, so like, I disagree with that argument entirely. And to repeat myself from last time, you know, how are we asking people who are dealing with some horribly tragic things and to deal with them day in and day out and not offer them any assistance whatsoever as far as a benefit is concerned? When we pay other departments' benefits, these fine folks they deal with car accidents and fires and stuff you wouldn't even imagine, and we can't even offer them a benefit. So when we get to this point as well, I'd like a recorded vote on this.
My comment on this is, I think it's a great idea. I don't think we should be doing this without the support of Addington Highlands and doing both fire departments together. I think we should step back for 12 months, approach Addington Highlands and say, what do you think? Because I'm very much afraid of driving a wedge between the two fire departments and splitting it right just west of here. You know, and if Addington Highlands agrees, I'll be the first one to say, I think we should do this. Councillor Fowler.
I agree with that. I think they should benefit as well. And is the money going to be coming out of this council? And that's the other thing, because that fire department's in two different townships. So we might have to have the agreement from Addington Highlands as well.
That's the whole point. Councillor Hoodle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we should delay this for 1 year. And if combine it with the other fire department next year, do it together.
The region.
When would we possibly even know the answer to that question, though?
There's nothing prohibiting us from making or sending a letter or sending, you know, approaching Addington Highlands and asking them what they would like to do. We have to ask them. That's only fair, because if we commit North Frontenac to it and we cause problems over there, then we have issues with potential issues with Addington Highlands, let alone issues between one fire department and another.
So they approached this subject 2 years ago. I feel like we've kind of, like, why haven't we said something before now? Like, this came up 2 years ago over there. This is not a new topic of discussion for Addington Highlands. And so how come now we're coming up with this idea that we should talk to Addington Highlands?
Because we pay for 50% of Caledar Berry.
I understand that.
So if they have another 24,000, we're on the hook for 12.
I wish we'd had this information before this meeting as to whether or not they would maybe even agree to benefits or not for Caledar Berry.
Councillor Good.
Yes, we were just at the meeting there this morning. And I don't want to get into their business, but they wouldn't agree to it this year. I'm 100% sure on that. Just from what.
Their levy increase is gonna be large, so.
Yeah, their increase is gonna be large and they're in negotiations with the union.
I apologize. For some reason, today's a little off. Right now I'm hearing it's a no-go for this year, but we want to pursue it in future years. But we have a vote coming up and a Councillor Regent's request. We will hold a recorded vote for that. Okay, Councillor Hoodle?
Can we just put in that we will contact Addington Highlands about putting in the budget?
Yes, put that in the motion.
Yes, please.
Yep. I think it's a great idea.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
We, in the past, have had joint meetings with Addington Highlands, council to council. That might be a time to introduce it then, or I don't know whether it would be or not.
I think it's a great idea. I really do. Okay, building department. Pardon?
Prior to mentioning the joint council meeting, I was going to say that it really should go to the fire committee. When we get to that motion, that this be discussed at the committee level, but joint council is fine too either way. That was just a process thing.
I think a joint council meeting, we should have at least once a year, just because we work together so closely. Councillor Herman?
Well, like Tara says, if it goes to the committee, they already have a quorum there. So if they approve it there, it's already pre-approved for council.
Okay, no, I think we should follow the route and, push it forward and see what they say. If they say no, then we can make our own decision, and we've done all of our homework and said, here's the offer, this is what we're going to do. But I agree with Councillor Good, they have serious budget issues, union negotiation issues and so on, so who knows? Okay. Councillor Fowler,
Yeah, would we have to defer it for a whole year until next year's budget, or can we add something in there where we can bring it back if we do have an agreement with the other township?
how do we pay for it? Good idea, though. But how do we pay for it? So. And I haven't really heard that too much here. We only had budget time, so. Okay, so building department, is there anything in here? Up 33%. John? Floor's yours.
Well, one way of looking at this, if this department is in fact self-funded, as it's supposed to be, I think by Ontario legislation, is that correct, Kelly?
So it's not legislated that it's self-funded. It can't make revenue and offset like other departments. So it does have to use the money. So we do call it self-funded. We do have it funded within itself in the budget process. The main reason for this increase is the approval of the permit clerk, because we've taken on this septic installation, like applications and installation inspection. So that is the main reason for this increase here. Again, any changes here would not affect the tax levy or the tax rate.
So I've seen here that the revenues are short 16,600 in the 24 budget from the total expenses. Is that correct? My reading of it is that $16,000 shortfall has to come either from a reserve or from the levy.
So I'm sorry, which line are you looking at?
I'm just looking at the actual expenses of the department, which is 272,000 less the permit fees.
Okay, so because you've taken out the capital purchases,
Yes.
so that affects sort of the formula. So it is offset, so there is no shortfall. So we do have a. So yes, we do propose some money from the building department reserve fund to offset this department.
So you're telling me this difference is not affecting the levy at all because it's all coming from reserves?
Right, so the building department currently has a reserve fund with money in it, which for many years we didn't, so that's a good news story. So we are estimating the permit fees. Again, we haven't had a full year with the septic, so we're not sure where that will be. And so we are budgeting that some money will have to come from the reserve in 2024, but it is the building department reserve. That's the intent of it.
I guess in this department, I'd have to view 33% increase as a good news story. We're expanding.
That would be what it is, yeah.
And as I recall, and Corey, you can chime in here, we are holding off for a few months on hiring the new clerk pending the identification of changes to the building code and so on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the next one is, where are we? Bylaw enforcement up 10.5%. John?
I don't have a specific comment on this one. It's a small department. It's $80,000.
So just, I'll put it, so $4,900 is directly in relation to the new parking bylaw coming into place. So it's for legal and bylaw and all the, everything that goes around the parking bylaw.
So at some point in time, this may come back as a benefit to us. If the parking bylaw is successful. We get those fines, right?
We get the revenues, yes, from the parking bylaw. And then we're also eventually, hopefully, going to look at some AMP stuff and bring it back. Administrative monetary penalties for you guys to consider. Tara and I've started just researching it a little bit for a few of the things, but that would also bring revenue in as well if we were to go that route. So we'll bring something soon.
Fowler?
Yeah, of the fees that you get back, is that 100% of the fine that's levied against the individual? Or is some of that money going to be going to the Ontario Court of Justice?
That's only for the only fees we ever get back will be for the parking. That's it. None of our other stuff we get back anything for. It would only be for parking.
Protection and emergency services. So John has it up 39.3%, which is substantial.
It looks to me like the major increase is due to, is that just one tower, Eric?
Mr. Mayor, through you, that is correct. It's just the Big Lake Tower, the new tower.
So by some analysis, it's just a new tower. That's a piece of infrastructure. You might want, some accounting practices would put this into the capital, not the operating.
Okay, so the increase here, there's almost 15,000 for the towers, but that is for maintenance and inspections of the towers. This all came about with the installation of the new tower. So the new tower has been capitalized. So 15,000 is just to inspect all of our towers and maintenance on all of our towers and our equipment through the process of putting up the tower. And I mean, the chief can correct me if I'm wrong. They've been able to come and kind of tweak some of our equipment in other places to make sure they're working efficiently. So that is where that is. And then there's another 10,000, which is fencing, which is just to finish up that project, but it's coming from reserves. So that's part of that increase as well, the overall increase.
Anybody else? Okay. Animal control, nothing. Street lights,
I have one comment about streetlights.
sure.
There's a light in Snow Road that will not go off.
Which one is that?
It's the northernmost one on 509.
So just a comment, we do rely on people a lot of times telling us that. And the big thing for us is unless it's a marker light, we usually wait till we get 2 or 3 because the costs are so crazy to get them up here to fix them. So that thank you, it gets added to a list. And then when we have 2 or a few of them, then Brooke calls and says, can you come and fix? We got 3 lights, come and fix them again. It's crazy expensive. So we're pretty cautious with that.
The way that we go about replacing them is typical of most municipalities. We lived in Kitchener for a while and you wanted your light replaced. They didn't check it. You had to call in. I also like to thank everybody in the township that was involved in putting the lights in and LED lights and so on. Tremendous cost savings. Not all municipalities have it yet. If you look at traffic lights, some of them are, some of them aren't. So. Okay, so now we're into roads. And it's big dollars and it's up 1.9%. And I have to tell you, I sat down and said, we have to cut. And I was deferring a couple trucks and doing this and doing that. And I was down to about 2 or 3%. And then I met with Corey and I met with Kelly, who educated me in the budget system. And we don't budget the same way other municipalities do. Some municipalities budget line by line for absolutely every item. And that was my previous experience. So if you wanted a $20,000 widget, This year, that's what it was. This municipality years ago, and I've heard it, or we've all heard it from Councillor Good and Councillor Hermer and some from Councillor Inglis, decided years ago that we need to be financially prudent, and they created fairly profitable, reasonable reserve funds. So we don't fund individual items, we fund the reserve fund. And then out of the reserve fund, us to some degree, but mostly staff, decide what's going to be spent. So it's coming out of a reserve fund. If we put $100,000 into a reserves fund, that 100,000 impacts the levy. But we could spend 300,000 inside or 10,000 inside, and that does not impact the levy. So when I said earlier, there ends the discussion, the money was in a reserve. No matter what we do isn't going to have, it's just the way we do business. It's a good way to do business. It just, I needed that education and, you know, one of the things we talked about in general is having a second orientation. We had it originally when we became counselors, and it like went on for a couple of days. It was very long. Sometimes it was tedious. It was a lot of information to absorb. You don't remember most of it. But with a year and a half under our belts, maybe it's time to have a second look at it. Much shorter than the first round, but it might be worth a day for us to do that. So we'll be talking to you about that in the future. So is there anything under the road section that you want to talk about? Sure, John.
Is it the case, Darwin, that the roads department is unique in that it is the one department that spends at least as much on capital as it does on operations? Others are very different.
Mr. Mayor, through you, that's okay. We have a large fleet of equipment. Proud of the program council has to be renewing that pretty much on an annual basis. So, but it's at a large expense. If I could just comment on this idea of using inflation or the rate of inflation as a benchmark. And for other departments too, but for roads in particular, how they determine that percentage isn't that relevant to the items that I'm dealing with. And I kind of have three examples or groups of examples. Equipment repairs since COVID have just went through the roof. Both for parts and units that we have to send out and get repaired. It's just incredible the increase there. And then items like salt and brine and sand and even plow blades. That 3.8% really isn't relevant to the cost increase on those at all. When we're sitting here and watch that truck go by with the pup behind it and the load of salt, that's like $5,000 or $6,000 depending on what he has on. So it only takes a couple extra loads and you're down $12,000. So that's kind of the one category. The other is again just items we don't have any control over. And I was just looking, my insurance goes from, the treasurer could comment on this, but from 90,000 to 100. So well over the rate of inflation there. And the third that it doesn't count for is where we have added to sustain the services we're having or perhaps enhance them. And I know this year I've added $5,000 to the consultant budget just for small miscellaneous assignment, designs, assignments and emergency responses. We have the OSIM inspections added this year that weren't in last year. That's 15,000 that we're obligated to do every 2 years in accordance with legislation, but that it appears to be a new 15,000, but it isn't really. So that's just the struggles I have if we're looking at inflation as kind of setting the benchmark. But
That's interesting. So it's doubly impressive that you've been able to keep operating expenses at just 1.9%.
well, like the mayor mentioned, we went through this closely. The 2025 loader, I think it's 2025 or 2005 loader has the original tires on it. And suddenly this year, it's over $14,000 to put a set of tires on that. So tread's good, age-wise, they should be replaced, but anything like that, we could defer that we've deferred, but it means you're probably stuck with it next year. But
I have no further comments on this department.
Next one up is waste, which is another big one. John, your thoughts?
So-
And recycling, you put the two of them together if you want.
Well, waste and recycling, total this year, about 875. And that's probably up about 12 or 13% from last year in total. So comments from Darwin about why?
Well, I'll start with the capital, which was the good news this year. We completed our upgrading to the new large bins and stairs, so that's done and retrofitting the sea containers, so you don't see any of that on capital. And the only capital item that was going to be there was not the big wheeled compactor, but the small compactor for blue box items at Plevna was up for renewal. But with the transition for blue box items, we just deferred that a year or two till we know what we need. So I don't have any large items here under, if I just look at waste and recycling together. We were grinding just at 506, which was about $20,000, 22,000. Last year we had funding through the windstorm cleanup where we ran the free brush program. So we did grinding at Plevna, but we were subsidized for that. So I've added 8,000 this year to grind at both sites. So that's in addition to what the base budget would have. And with the blue box transition, I have a report on the agenda at the next council meeting. There's going to be a series of agreements and negotiations that go on when we implement that. And I've included $5,000 for legal fees there. I think we're going to need some solicitor's advice on these agreements. I think a lot of the rest of the increase is on, and dealing with the treasurer on this. She set me some targets to beat this year. The sites are busy and we've doubled up, added staff to accommodate that. Just, we're going to follow that closely this year and just make sure it's absolutely necessary. It's just, if we go with a single attendant, say at Plevna, we can still operate, but in the busy part of the summer, we'll have cars lined up out on Buckshot Lake Road and then no one's happy with that. So, so a good part of this is staff and use of casuals and that has my attention for this season and I'm going to be working on that.
Any other comments?
If I can just add to as well, there's 30,000 under waste for the Kashwakamak site compliance. So again, that's an increase from last year. It is coming from reserves, but it is in this comparison, that is a significant part of it as well.
Okay. Counselor Hoodle,
Just a quick question, the brush cleanup, we're charging now again, right?
We are, yeah, it was started, I think, 1st of October, a date last fall that we're charging again.
let's move on to, well, cemeteries is only $7,600. Community halls. There's a couple items in there. One is the booking software. And I think one is, that's the volunteer dinners in here too. Yes, it is. So the first one up is the booking software. So the expenses. Where was the item?
Is that something we need right now, the booking software, or can that be deferred at $5,000?
Mr. Mayor, through you, if I may, so it is coming from a reserve fund, so it's not directly affecting taxation right at this time. My recommendation is we do really need it. It's going to make the process much smoother, give more access as well. We'll be able to use it for our roads crew, knowing when halls are booked for maintenance. Also, there is some issues with, our insurance and liability, potential liability, with our volunteers handling cash and agreements and stuff like that. So, yeah, my recommendation is it is necessary this year, but for your discussion.
But it's being funded from a reserve.
Correct. It's coming from the Special Parks Reserve Fund.
Is it going to continue to come from, like, this has got a, as I recall, a $3,250 annual subscription fee, which I find horrendous. Like it's $1,600 to buy and then they double it to keep it. Can we not find something better? Sorry, it's just my opinions.
I'll let Brooke comment. I think we did look at a few. This would be certainly the least expensive because some of our neighbors are paying significantly more. It can be a discussion next year because we do have that special parks where we have to allocate or spend 60% annually. So depending what the amount is in there, we may be able to, it is supposed to be for recreation purposes. I'm not sure if the ongoing costs can come from that reserve, but it would be a discussion.
So this is where that ask from the county for the K&P trail was going to come from? The last
Special
meeting?
parks, yes.
Okay.
So right now, we still have not allocated 60% as we're required to do.
So no impact on the reserve now or for the foreseeable future. Is that a fair statement?
Sorry,
No impact on, no impact on the tax levy now or for the foreseeable future.
so there's no impact for 2024. I mean, it would be brought to you as a taxation item for 2025 as a maintenance, but I think we're going to see the value and it pay for itself, actually.
Councillor Goodall.
Just out of curiosity, we have a software package for booking the campsites, correct? What's the maintenance on that for a year?
I'd have to defer to Kelly, but it's significant.
Yeah, it's per booking. I can't remember the exact dollars, but it's significant.
Significant as way more than $3,400?
Yeah, because it is by per booking that we pay. So again, it changes based on how many bookings we have. Just trying to see if I can find the expense line for it.
Along that line, if we purchase it this year, there's no cost to us. We come to next year's operational budget discussion and we're going to see a request to fund the annual subscription. If we find that it's acceptable, we're out the $5,000. You know, we can make a choice again next year, right? $1,650 to buy and $3,250 to reserve.
I think as staff, we would request it that if you approve us to go forward, that you are approving that there is going to be expenses going forward. Because I think if we transition the public and people using the halls to using the system and then a year later take it out, would be even harder than. So, yeah, we would ask if you are approving it for this year, that you do understand that there is expenses going forward.
Councillor Hermer?
Kelly, is it possible that that same program could be used for the booking of the campsites?
No, they're very different, and the campsite one is very complex. I mean, we have, all the sites, it's a full reservation system. This one for booking the halls is really geared that way. I mean, in the world of computers right now, that is not really a huge expense as far as ongoing for maintenance and updates and hosting the information and all of that goes with computer programs.
My issue is the relationship between the initial subscription and the maintenance, but other than that, okay. We can't buy more than 1 year subscription, eh? and take additional money out of that reserve? Or am I pushing the envelope a little?
No, I don't think we do more than 1 year. I think we can look to see whether that ongoing subscription falls, closely within the parameters of that reserve fund, and maybe we can continue to fund it from there, but I have to look to see.
So right now, the volunteers, they do all their own booking, they collect the money, they do all that. And this would be, it would go through like a township website, they would. So I'm just wondering how much money is lost when the volunteers do it.
Potential.
It's just a convoluted mess. They call up, someone has them call Brooke, do this, do that. And if we could do it electronically and so on, it really is a benefit. So. Anyway. Okay, I like the idea that there's no impact this year and we have another kick at it next year if it doesn't work. Okay, and some softwares don't work, so. Okay, so. This also has item 50205. Volunteer Appreciation Dinner, $1,500. And I understand it was an act of council or a request of council to set this in place by the previous council, and I attended as a volunteer. It was great. But do we want to go forward with that $1,500 this year? Councillor Hermer.
I think we should, because volunteers are a major asset to any activity within the township. And to show some appreciation for that, I think it's essential.
Councillor Good? Councillor Regent?
For real,
No,
like, come on,
that's fine.
like, these halls are generally, like, isn't most of this work volunteer?
It's all volunteer.
There you go.
Councillor Hermer? Oh, sorry, I meant Councillor Fowler. My apologies.
I think we should support the volunteers whenever we can.
Councillor Hoodle?
Are these just, is this for the volunteers for the halls?
Just
for the halls?
$1,500.
Just for the halls, or all volunteers?
All volunteers. Yes,
Okay.
within our community.
Deputy Mayor?
Well, you know what I'm gonna say. Keep it in.
All right. Okay. So then recreation. I had originally thought that there were some issues in here that we could defer, but they're under the capital plan, so that comes out of a reserve, so there's no impact. Councillor Hoodle?
I know this sounds weird, but why are we down so much?
Yeah, so in 2023, we had about $52,000 of work at the boat launches. So it is continuing this year, but so that's reduced by 52,000. There's some work for the rink maintenance that's down. We reallocated the swim programs under the Department of Sundry. So that was 3,000, and promotions, the rural students, the rural, I forget what the name of the program is anyways. It got reallocated to Sundry Department, so that brought it down as well.
So anything else under recreation? M&R Parks? It's all out of reserve, right?
So it's funded within itself.
Libraries up, it's only it's only $800. Planning Department down 1.8%. Any comments about this particular department? Nope, seeing none. And then property, building maintenance, grass cutting, property cleanup, snow removal and so on. Our properties generally look really good. Congratulations, well, thank you. We're down 0.9%. So John, we've been through the entire list. Do you have anything else you want to table now?
I ask a follow-up question of Kelly. Under M&R Parks, I calculated that there was a shortfall. How have I got that wrong? You said it was self-funded, but when I look at the numbers.
Because some of the expenses are funded from reserves. So again, the comparison that you've completed here, it's a great way to compare it, but it doesn't take into account any money from reserves or how some of this stuff is funded.
So when something is funded from reserves, how are those reserves replaced?
So within M&R Parks, the reserves are replaced through M&R Parks. So again, M&R Parks in itself is not funded from any tax dollars. So it generally has a surplus.
So you're saying this, in an ongoing fashion, this appears to be sustainable?
It is for sure, yes.
I'm sure this question's been asked before, but is there an opportunity with the Crown to expand park facilities?
There could potentially, yes. So on February 23rd, I'm bringing you the annual report, which will talk a little about potential expansions.
Because I'm thinking of the campgrounds and Costa Hermer's comments and so on, and okay, it's rough camping, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some way we can enhance some of those campsites eventually. We'll see where they are, or what happens. Okay. So before we leave the detailed review and go to the specific motions that are in our agenda, are there any final questions? Okay. First one up. We've received the draft budget for information. Okay. The capital plan for the hardtop roads. That's that additional $300,000 that was included in the capital plan. 200,000 came from the Canada Community Building Fund, then 100,000 from our reserves. During the coming year, we need to sit down and decide, unless you want to do it today, how we're going to keep funding this reserve, or whether we want to add an additional 1% or additional monies to this year. We acknowledged last time that we have a roads and bridge problem. We don't have enough funds to keep them or to improve them. And if we try to keep them where they are, we will not be able to do that. They will slowly deteriorate. I don't believe in the concept that just letting something deteriorate and they have a bunch of bumpy roads means you're going to keep them. You're theoretically going to lose it over time. Physical things deteriorate like this, and all of a sudden they do this. And I don't want to be here. We can help it. So we don't have enough money. So there is a secondary issue other than just doing the roads. It's how do we keep funding it? Do we want to have a secondary discussion and defer any increase until next year? We did put $300,000 extra in the budget this year, which will buy us 1 year. But we need to do something proactive going forward. So what are your wishes? Councillor Hoodle.
So that was the recommendation by the treasurer, right? To put $300,000 in this year. And
Yes.
then add an extra 100,000 starting next year.
So my recommendation was the 300,000 for this year. And then next year you would consider whether you're going to continue with that 300,000, which then would require the additional money into that reserve fund.
That's what Mr. Mayor, you're saying, put the 300,000 in plus another $100,000 this year. No,
I'm totally, the 300,000, I think we have to do. Okay, that's what's in the budget as we see it for this year. But we have to be proactive and look ahead. So how proactive do we want to be? So Kelly has, if you look at them, she has a reserve fund summary sheet for us in here. If you look at the roads portion, she's recommending 70,000 a year for 10 years. Is that right? Up to 700,000?
Yeah, so a 1% levy increase annually.
70, 140, 210.
Yeah.
Till we get there. And what we should be spending, if you have $100 million asset, which we do, theoretically, you should be spending 2%. That's $2 million a year. But we don't live in a perfect world. So if we spent somewhere around 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, we would probably get by for the most part. We'd be okay. So if we shoot for 1.4 and we're already spending on average 700,000, Kelly's idea of $70,000 or 1% a year, starting at 70,000, would get us up there in 10 years. But meanwhile, as we're building this, the roads are doing this. At least in the first 3 or 4 years, we have to come up with some kind of way of using our reserves to build up the roads reserve. And maybe we can access some of the money in the Canada Building Fund without depleting it. Like maybe 50 or 100,000 a year out of that for 2 or 3 years. Can we do this? I always have to ask.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Canada Community Building Fund can be used for roads for sure.
Well, how can we use our own resources to get to where we need to be in the short run? Vern,
Are you suggesting that in 10 years, the levy will be up to $1 million?
yes. Yes. As opposed to being at, well, it'll be another 700,000 on top of what we are now, it'll be 1.4 million. And we're spending 700,000 now.
Do you think that's affordable?
I don't think you have a choice.
Well, I don't know. I can't agree with, we don't have a choice, but can taxpayers support that? That's my question, eh?
If you put in a 1% levy now, if you start it, or we start it next year. At some point in time, let's say we're into year 4 and we've got $280,000 going away. And we can make the determination that that extra 280 is holding the road conditions and so on here. Then we can reduce that additional surcharge, remove it or whatever. We just can't go, in my opinion, saying, here's 300 million or $300,000 this year and then did nothing for 5 years. And all we bought is a little bit of time. So we need to be practical about how we're going to do this, if we want to do this at all.
I understand what you're saying, but from a taxpayer's perspective, they're gonna scream like hell if they see another surtax on top of a tax.
So I don't have any other answers for you. That's the problem. Councilor Hoodle.
Just so I get this straight. So we increase it by 1% next year or this year, whatever. Then following year, we increase it again by another 1%. And following year, another 1%. So we're compounding over the years.
Yes,
So every year when we do our budget, 1% is designated automatically to roads.
1% of the levy, which is $70,000.
Right. And if we don't do this, Garwin.
Well, Mr. Mayor, they continue to deteriorate. And you showed the typical graph there where funding, if it doesn't go up, conditions going down. I think there will be an initiative regarding level of service for roads and my background, what we had was for out of the road needs study, we know that they're 48% poor, very poor. And we had the ability annually to look at what our funding could accomplish and then different funding projections and what it would take to raise that to 60 or whatever council's target was for level of funding. So we're not there yet, but that's an option when we adopt a level of service more.
So are we under provincial obligation to maintain our roads to a certain level?
Well, I'm obligated to maintain them in accordance with the minimum maintenance standards. So there's standards for everything from pothole repair to edge loss to washouts, shoulder condition. So the worse the condition is, then the more we spend to maintain them to that standard. When we think of minimum maintenance standards, we just think of winter typically, the plowing before the snow is 4 inches deep. But they do apply year round on other deficiencies.
Deputy Mayor,
I'm looking at the 10-year summary. I just wonder why under the revenue side of that summary, OSIF funding is cut off to zero starting in 2029.
We're only guaranteed until 2027, actually 2028. So the program ends. The province has only guaranteed funding till that time.
So that certainly affects the TCA balance. When you lose that, you're losing $650,000 a year starting in 2029.
Yeah, so I mean, so that is factored in that summary, so that you can see what our proposed ending balance is, knowing that that program is ending. With any luck, other programs will come. So again, this is kind of something we have to look at annually, because if we get a big grant, then that sort of helps us, and so that's why we do look at the 10-year and adjust it annually.
I just wonder if it's realistic to assume that we're going to lose $250,000 in a program that is consistent now and has been for a number of years. Is it reasonable to assume we're going to lose it 100, like all of it?
Yes, yes. So we probably will start seeing reductions. We didn't this year. I'm not 100% sure why. Most municipalities saw they could reduce it by up to 15% starting this year. So most municipalities did see a reduction of 15%. We actually received an increase. It's a very complicated formula for that funding model, but they had already extended the program once, and that there is no intent of extending it at this time.
Well, another way of looking at this $300,000 a year carried forward for hardtop surfacing is that it's necessary for us to levy this because of downloading. We're losing a current $250,000 per year.
all
Starting.
that potential downloading. I agree with you, but let's, we don't know for sure.
So I'm wondering, what happens if in 2029, 5 years from now, what happens if the program continues? We will have been overtaxing people for the capital portion of our budget for 5 years.
So I think because even with the 300,000, we are not meeting where we would like to be as far as number of kilometers per the consultant report. So should they continue with that money, then that will give us the opportunity to do some enhancements. So right now we are maintaining, and I'll let Darwin fully, but we're maintaining our roads. We're not doing, the construction and all the other things that need to be done. So I don't think we're overtaxing.
So just to make it clear to me, I'm finding this all a bit confusing, but in order to carry this 2024 amount of $300,000 into the future, we're going to have some kind of a surcharge on the capital levy, the capital portion of the levy. And the smoothest way to do that is to bring in a fixed percentage increase each year over the previous year. Is that right?
So we're looking at a 1% levy increase. So it's not on that capital. So I don't want it to be called a tax on a tax, or it's just we're proposing that you increase the levy. So the dollars to be raised through taxation by 1% that will be allocated to the roads capital program going forward. Should you want to continue with that 300,000? Otherwise, if I were to carry that 300,000 across, our reserves will be zero in 10 years, and I'm not sure what we do at that point.
So some of this is a gamble. Our reserves would be zero if the OSIF funding ceased.
Correct.
Counselor Hermer,
Well, I don't know what kind of an effect this may eventually have on municipalities, but the federal minister of transportation made an announcement that they will no longer be funding road infrastructure. And I imagine that's gonna have an effect on the provincial level, and then that'll reflect on what we receive.
to walk that back, but you know, it's the ink and words and whatever you said it. What does that mean? Don't have to do it this year. We're putting 300,000 in. We can start it next year. It's probably advisable we do it this year. We could do a lesser amount. We could do, say, 0.5% or 0.75%. But I think at some point in time, we have to decide how much of the inevitable we're just putting into the future. How proactive do we want to be? The question I want to ask Corey is, after you've seen, and Kelly too, you've seen the work, and you guys put a lot of work into this budget that we looked at today. What does 2025 look like? Are we looking at similar 6-7% projected increases? Or are we going to return maybe more to the 3-4% projected increase? And I'm just asking you for a crystal ball opinion.
Wish I
Sorry.
had that crystal ball.
You would hang me out the same way, so please.
I don't have a crystal ball going forward. Certainly, we're hoping to start doing some more multi-year budgeting soon. We're just getting comfortable with the new program. This is our second budget with this program, which will allow us to start kind of projecting out. But I definitely don't have a crystal ball on what we're going to be looking at.
Rory, different opinion or?
I don't have a different opinion.
Well-
I'm of the same opinion as the treasurer. I mean, this is,
We're supposed to be the politicians, not you two.
yeah, no, it is. I really can't, I couldn't answer that and truthfully, I couldn't answer that and give
So
you. a
how much did we defer this year before it came to council? That you're going to bring back next year?
So you want to see where we're? Yeah. Okay, sort of quick calculation, based on the discussion. So you haven't formally made these decisions through resolution. And I did add in the Caladarberry Fire Committee decision today as well, the 36,000. So right now with the decisions you made, we are at a 5.4 levy impact.
The council conference would go down to
Yeah.
$15,000 cut.
Yeah, so we do have the 8 up top. I tried to, I know you liked the county version, so I was trying to use theirs, but there's because
Doesn't always do everything right, so.
So I think theirs is kind of like it's in or it's out and not partial, so it kind of made it a bit weird for the program. So we did take the 8 out plus the 7, so we did take out 15. We took out the fire volunteer benefits. So you'll see the no there. And then the adjustments, other than those that were kind of on the table previously, we added in the Caladarberry. Took out the 8,000 for admin, took out the reduced the CIP by 13,380. And then the EDO position, as discussed, it is a contract till July 1st. So we are only seeing a reduction from July 1st on. So I've quickly estimated it at about 44,000.
What does our tax rate look like then, Stephanie? Divide it all together, there's a drop.
I'll need a couple of minutes if you want me to get a tax rate out for you.
Sorry, Kelly, what did it look like before you made those changes?
6.83. Counselor Good.
To keep it below the 6 mark, I was thinking we could put a 0.5 against the roads this year. Now put up at 5.9. That'll help us out for the future.
things to start. And we build it up. And I said earlier, we have money in the Canada Building Fund. So while we're building up our reserve for roads, like, I know the target for the reserve with capital is 5 to 6 million, and you know, we're sitting at about half of that, maybe a little more. I just don't think that's reasonable. But if we can use some of the money over the first couple of years and be, you know, maybe apply $100,000 for 2 or 3 years out of that $1 million. And keep this, so 50, 100, 150, that sort of thing, but 0.5% works for me. Roy?
Yeah, I'd agree with Councilor Good. We have to protect our infrastructure, and 0.5% added there. I would support that.
Deputy Mayor?
I was going to suggest that independently. Thanks, Wayne. But I am going to vote for the EDO position, which adds another 0.65, so we'd end up at 6.45%, which I could live with. I'll get crucified, but
I disagree. I don't think you would get crucified. And if we're not careful with doing proper increases, we're gonna end up in a situation like other townships have found themselves in, which is way higher.
Councillor Fowler?
I'd like to see more improvements on the roads.
I need something, I like this, what's your idea in 0.5% increase? Do you favor that,
I think we could.
Deputy Mayor?
can I just clarify then? That makes the calculation of the capital levy fairly complex. It's currently 1.581 million steady state plus 2% of the total levy, which increases very slowly. Now we're putting in a 1% increase, 1% of what?
The levy,
Of the levy added each year,
0.5%.
right?
0.5%.
Well, 0.5% for this year. I mean, the recommendation was 1%, so if you did 0.5% this year, and then you can decide on 0.5% or 1% next year.
But that's a different formula than the 2%. It's called 2% to infrastructure sustainability.
Yeah, so I think the wording and in that one, so when that one first came in, that 2%, it came in, so it was a new 2% in 1 year. When I read back, I think probably the intent was that it would be a new 2% each year, but instead we adjusted it just to make up to be the 2% of levy opposed to the new 2%.
Well, if you had done it that way, that would have been 2% each year attributable. I mean, that would have been way too high.
Well, that would have met with the asset management plan at the time and with what our roads needs, right? So we wouldn't be probably having this conversation right now about whether we're doing the construction and the work on the roads.
I've always found that distinction quite confusing. Let's add 2% each year. There's two ways of thinking about that.
Yeah,
And you chose the easy option.
and funny, I guess, enough at our last meeting, during our meeting, my email was exploding with treasurer's discussion about adding 1% and 2% capital levies. So that is kind of what's coming along as people are doing.
On that, do we know what Central's doing?
Their next meeting is the 26th of February, I believe.
Because I watched their budget meeting and their comment from their roads guy was, don't worry about the roads, they'll just be rough, they'll still be there. And, you know, that's their way of doing business. And here we have the difference, we have Harlow and Henderson Road. And whenever you read something on Facebook about roads, they're talking about Henderson Road south of the line. And you drive on 506, you drive on 509, they're okay now, but they're getting hard to, you hope when the frost comes out, they smooth off, but that's becoming more and more difficult. And the longer we leave it, the worse it's gonna get. So we have to do something. I think 0.5% is a good start. We can look at it next year. If we think it should be 1 or 2, or keep it at 0.5, or we can make that decision as we go.
Yeah, that's why I said 0.5% this year and then boost it to 1% next year, but we'll see what happens. Maybe we can do better.
Sorry, how did we get 6.05?
Sorry, that was,
5.4.
yeah, so that was just, sorry, Deputy Mayor was talking about the EDO position. He was just wondering what the difference was, I think, so.
EDO back in at 83,000, it would boost us to 6.05. Huh? 44, yeah, okay. 6.05 plus we have another 0.5% on there. Roughly. 35,000, right? Vern,
It may only be 44 this year, but next year it'll balloon.
I'm afraid of that. We have to start it now. Six point six, 6.58.
Based on the discussions so far with what's been taken out and adding a 0.5% towards the roads capital, we are at 5.93% levy.
Calculation for me. Please make the roads 50,000. So, folks, we're going to go forward and we're going to go through the individual items here. And then the last item will create a resolution to talk about this 0.5%. Okay. All right, so what do we start with? How do we start here? Okay, so we're back to 5B, receiving the Public Works Manager's capital plan.
Moved by Councillor Good, seconded by Councillor Regent. Be it resolved that council receives for information an email from the Public Works Manager regarding the capital plans submitted for hard surfaces roads, including Buckshot Lake Road, Sand Lake Road, and Lookout Road, and proposing additional projects to Harlow Road and Snyder Road.
Comments? In favor? It's carried. Consideration of the 24 budget. Manager Community Development is increased to one staff or to staff hours.
Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Good. Be it resolved that council approves the seasonal Crown Land Stewardship Program staff position increase in hours from 32 to 40 hours weekly for the months of June, July, August, and September, and that this position shall continue to be funded by the Crown Land Stewardship Program's operating budget on an annual basis.
Comments? In favor? Carried. The next one's the Community Improvement Plan. This will be a recorded vote.
Oh. Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Hudel. Be it resolved that council approves including $28,378.69 in additional CIP funding in the 2024 budget and 2024 topping up to the allocated funding of $30,000.
Well, this is the original budget, original resolution. So if we don't pass it, we can bring one back for a lesser amount. Can we just do that? 13,000
13,380 is what we
topping out.
took
15.
out.
The amendment reads, the council approves including $13,380 in additional CIP funding in the 2024 budget, in 2024 topping up the unallocated funding to $15,000.
Okay. Comments before we vote? You're on deck.
Counselor Fowler? Counselor Good? Counselor Hermer?
Yes.
Counselor Hudel?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ingalls? Approves including $13,380 in additional CIP funding in the 2024 budget, in 2024 topping up the unallocated funding to $15,000.
Yes.
Counselor Regent?
Yes.
Mayor Lickey?
Yes.
That motion is carried 7-0.
Okay, the next one is item 6D. This is the manager of economic development officer, a temporary position. Sorry, did I miss one? My apologies. Community Hall's booking system.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council approves the manager of community development purchasing software for community hall bookings at a cost of approximately $5,000 coming from the Special Parks Reserve Fund, and that the manager of community development will report back to council with recommended updates to bylaw 5322, community halls rental bylaw.
Comments? In favor? Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Now, the economic development officer.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council approves the hiring of the EDO position on a permanent full-time basis of 37.5 hours per week effective July 14th, 2024. And the EDO shall continue to report to the manager of community development.
This is a recorded vote.
Counselor Fowler? Counselor Good? Counselor Hermer?
Against.
Counselor Hudel?
No.
Deputy Mayor Ingalls?
4.
Counselor Regent?
4.
Deputy, Mayor Lickey? That motion is lost 5-2.
So the next item up is the firefighter group benefits.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council approves providing North Frontenac eligible firefighters group benefits starting in 2024 at an estimated cost of approximately $24,000. The council instructs the Director of Emergency Services Fire Chief to draft a policy defining the implementation and parameters of firefighter group benefits for the CAO's consideration.
Comments?
Didn't we say that we were going to put in the motion that we were going to talk to the committee about adding violence? Doing it next year?
We did do that. So can we make that part of the resolution? Or, well, wait a minute. Based on what I saw here, this would go, if we vote against it, and then we can bring that resolution. back
Okay,
up.
all I'm asking that
We
we
can do that,
can't do
right?
it in one motion. We vote against this and then add a new motion.
Okay, so this is in favor of the 24,000, spending 24,000. If we'll vote against it, we'll bring it back right after and say, we'll direct council or staff to talk to Addington Highlands and get their wishes and see if we can work on this together.
And what would the cutoff date on that be?
We'll bring it back for the next budget, which is next year.
Essentially, this won't be till next year if we say no to it.
Yes.
Okay, just to be
That-
clear.
that's- If Addington Highlands comes back and says no, then this council has a decision to make.
Okay, so what is the motion going to say, to be clear?
Motion's going to say something along the lines that staff approached Addington Highlands and the Caledonia Fire Department about including benefits for their firefighters. Period, yes. Pardon?
In the same time we are, right? If we
Yeah, so-
approve this next year, we would like Barry Callender to have the same benefits.
But just to be clear, crystal clear, This is getting pushed to next year. If everybody says no to it. Or yes to your new motion.
If we all say no, it's getting pushed to next year. If we say no to the motion, it's dead. If we say yes to the second motion, then it could live depending on what Addington Highlands comes back. Nobody here said we didn't think it was a good idea. We all said, how do we fund it and what are the ramifications with Addington Highlands? Like, I don't think they should have been here without us talking to Addington Highlands. And I'm disappointed that Addington Highlands brought it forward, or Barry Calendar brought it forward to their council a couple years ago without contacting us. So. Wayne,
Yes, it was brought to the board 2 years ago and the board said no. That was the majority on the board. And it
Didn't
didn't
mean
come
by the
to
board, Wayne.
Calendar, Billy, our joint fire board. And that's when we all voted against it that time. I can't remember what the reasons was, whether it was the same thing, ratifications for North Frontenac or what, I don't remember.
I understand that it's Central has done this. But if you look at Central's tax rate and whatever, it's higher than ours. So we have enough issues. And I really want to support our fire department. I'm always there for them, but this time I just can't do this. John?
I'm still confused, like Stephanie. So if we vote against the first resolution, the second resolution says, we will consider this after talking to Addington Highlands. Okay, I'm going to vote against the resolution.
Why not, Eric?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I just want to add one thing. The group benefits for the firefighters is not about benefiting our current roster. It is enabling us to enhance our ability to recruit new, younger firefighters that have the potential to meet the certification requirements. North Frontenac does not have the same pool of resources as Addington Highlands. We also reimburse our firefighters at a lesser rate overall. The group benefits is to enhance our ability to recruit new firefighters. Our existing firefighters obviously will benefit, and that's the program.
I don't think anyone's suggesting this is a bad idea. I think it's a great idea. I just think, and I agree with the mayor, that it should be done in conjunction with their calendar.
So then if that's the case and you're not gonna have an answer from them anyways, and the answer might likely be no, and then that pushes it to next year anyways, why can't we simplify the motion? Cause this is, I do not want people saying something that out of a slight confusion. And then picking the wrong,
First of all, everybody's had a chance to look at the motion because this has been out for a couple of days. So we're voting on the particular motion that's before you. Do we want this? Yes or no? The fact that we have a second motion, if this particular motion fails, is a bonus to say, we believe it's a good idea. We just want to make sure we have our homework done and we want to work in conjunction with our partners. I want to give them, if we can, every opportunity to be in lockstep with us. And if it's dollars and cents thing and that shows up, maybe we should be, because if it goes here, what about Watashawan? What about the others that are around us? This just becomes a stepping stone. Fred?
Yes, is it possible that this money can come out of a reserve if the opportunity comes back sooner than next year's motion? Can we take that money out of a reserve and bring it back? It's $24,000. I'm sure there's places where we can get that kind of funding.
We don't have a reserve for this, do we? Or we wouldn't have one, Kelly?
We don't have a reserve specifically for this. You do have your contingency reserve that you use for things that tend to happen through the year. We do have the fire salaries emergency fund reserve. So again, that's fully a council decision. If it's something that comes back later in the year. Obviously, you're not looking at $24,000 anymore. You're looking at whenever that decision is made, so it may be significantly less. So,
And if Addington Highland gets on board, it's gonna be doubled.
yeah,
So-
we would have,
Okay. All right, the motion is on the floor. We're gonna call the vote for this particular motion, which says, do we want to spend the $24,000 now, or do we not? That's what it says. That's what it says. 24,000 for this. 24,000, damn the torpedoes, here we go, $24,000 now. Do we want to do this? Okay, so we're calling for, that's the motion in front of you. We've had it for several days. Tara, would you read the motion again, please?
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved, the council approves providing North Frontenac eligible firefighters group benefits starting in 2024 at an estimated cost of approximately $24,000. The council instructs the Director of Emergency Services Fire Chief to draft a policy defining the implementation and parameters of firefighter group benefits for the CAO's consideration. Counselor Fowler? Counselor Good? Counselor Hermer? Counselor Udall?
No.
Deputy Mayor Engels?
Yes.
Counselor Regent?
Yes.
Mayor Litkey?
Yes.
That motion is lost, 5-2.
Now we would like a motion that directs staff to talk to Addington Highlands Council and is it Barry Caladar or Caladar Barry? Caladar Barry Fire Department about implementing group benefits. Similar to the ones we are considering here, bringing that back to us for consideration at next year's budget. What?
You're extending it a year. I'm trying to cut that back by having it come forward or come back to this council if they approve it. And if they approve it before next year's budget, we should be able to take some money out of the contingency fund.
I think Councillor Goods, like I said, we don't get in their business, but it was made clear to us today they would not approve it.
So what we're saying is we want to make sure we've done our homework and we're going to ask them what they want to do. And based on their results, we will then make our own decision. We said, we've given you fair warning. And if we do this, you know what could happen. Because we could start poaching firefighters from Caladar Barry into North Frontenac, and that's good for us and it's bad for them. You know, won't happen. Okay. Anyway, so can you?
Can I just provide a little bit of, so the Caladar Barry Fire Department is managed by the committee, which is the 3 members from each township. So I think rather than asking staff, because there is no real connection of staff to like that department. It's ran by Chief Cuddy. So I think really this direction should go to the fire committee to have a discussion there, and then they go up from there. That's sort of how that's functions, that committee, that department.
Can you make this work?
I can.
Thank you. It eventually has to go to the council though, right, Alex Collins? Right? There's 5 of them. That's that's.
And that it has been shut down past at the committee level and shut off at the council level. Only once that I can remember in 18 years.
start with this and we'll see where we end up. Be it resolved that council requests the Joint Fire Committee discuss the potential for adding benefits for firefighters and that the decision of the committee be provided to each council. The Joint Fire Committee discussed the potential for adding benefits for the firefighters. That's,
Yeah. Do they have a name besides your fire? Oh, they're very good fire.
It's the Joint Fire Committee for the Calabar Fire Department. Yep. Other than that, we're okay. Moved by Counselor Eagle, seconded by Counselor Field. Be it resolved that council requests the Joint Fire Committee for the Calabar Fire Department discuss the potential for adding benefits for firefighters and that the decision of the committee be provided to each council. Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be resolved the council approves the Public Works Manager purchasing the heavy-duty scanner at a cost of approximately $9,100 and the annual subscription for the software and repair updates for $2,500.
Comments? Counselor Hermer,
Short-term pain for long-term gain.
in favor? Carried. Okay. So this item, Tara, it says we have to make these additions. So you have to list them all off, or is there a way you can short circuit this?
I have reduced council conferences at 15 and reduced administrative conferences by 1,000. And then
It's everything else in resolution.
1,000, yeah.
Oh, and then we have to add in, I think it should indicate that we're adding in for the Calabar fire.
I have to bring that back. I have to bring that motion to council for adoption.
I think we can add in there that we've added some funds, right? Because otherwise we're not going to end up to the same number. So can we just say that we increase the Calabar budget by 36,453? All right.
Handle the community improvement plan.
We reduced it by 15.
Does that have to be in here?
No, you had a separate resolution for that. So yeah, we're just navigating the what you have in resolution versus what we need. 36,453. Sorry, I was busy kind of working numbers. So did we have a resolution for the roads increase or do we need to include that? So then the roads capital increase, yeah. To increase to the contribution to roads TCA.
Increase roads capital TCA. By.
So we 0.5%, so it worked out to 35,788.
Can I just put by 35?
Yep, 35,788. I think everything else is covered under.
Brooke has her hand up.
You want to remove the EDO conference at this time? Or did you?
I saw that yesterday.
So we try to navigate so they removed the EDO position, but there was a couple of things like a conference and clothing allowance. Those line items, I guess, that we need to probably should list there. Thanks, Brooke. So we need to reduce for economic development, conferences by 2250. And then reduce economic development, other materials by 150.
Does not go the other way? I thought we were at 5.93%.
We just, again, when we're trying to do this sort of on the fly, so we are at 5.99.
Sorry. Go back at 23.
Yeah.
I know.
Information from. Counselor Ingle, second. by Counselor. Be it resolved that council approves in principle the 2024 draft budget with the following amendments. Reduce council conferences by 15,000, reduce administration conferences by 1,000, increase the Caladarberry Fire Department by $36,453, increase roads capital, tangible capital asset to the reserve fund by $35,788, reduce economic development conferences by 2250, and reduce economic development other materials by 150.
Final comments? In favor? Motion is carried. Affirmatory bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Ingalls, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-16, being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council for its special meeting held February 16th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Ingalls, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council adjourns the meeting at 2:40 PM until February 23rd, 2024, or at the call of the chair.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Right.